Wondering what certain grains are good for? Why do we have them? Maybe the history of them? What is the difference? If you're just really confused, no problem. Today, we're going to be diving down into one of them in our brand new series. And today, we're going to be talking about einkorn. Hi everyone, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, we discuss all the things concerning real whole grains from a biblical perspective. So for those of you who have been here before, welcome back. And for those of you who are new, welcome. Now, I have a video where I really went into all the different types of grains, specifically more of the wheat berries, and what they are, what they're good for, kind of broken them up in categories. But I still have many questions, especially concerning einkorn, because that video, and I will link it below for you if you just want a general overview. But now I'm actually going to be starting a new series, kind of all about the grains, or diving deep into grains, or I haven't figured out a name for it. But basically where I'm going to be putting videos up, focusing on one grain and going deep dive, turning over, go down the rabbit hole, all the things with that one specific grain. And by my calculations, that'll pretty much take me the rest of my life. I will not be doing these consecutively, but I will be including them in my channel and forming a playlist for those of you who would like to know more about specific types of grains. So the first up today in this series is einkorn. And the reason why I chose einkorn is it's kind of one of those grains that have gained popularity, but I don't think many people know why. They've kind of heard the marketing buzzwords and keywords and things like that about it being an ancient grain, and it's the original wheat and how it's healthier for us and we need to be consuming einkorn. And so I think due to a lot of really great marketing, many people are aware of einkorn, and then that's kind of it. They don't really know what to do with it, what it's good for, how to use it, how does it compare to our modern wheat, all of those things. So we're actually going to start back in history. We're going to talk about the history of einkorn. We're going to be talking about some controversies, like the controversies surrounding einkorn. And then I'm also going to tell you at the end, what it's good for and where you can buy it. So up first, the history of einkorn. Just the name itself, einkorn, is German, meaning single or one grain. It is considered to be the first wheat cultivated by humans thousands of years ago. So einkorn does obviously just grows in the wild, and it was easier for hunter-gatherer type people to be able to collect it because they could easily take it off and everything like that. But also they found in Europe's oldest mummy, Otzi the Iceman, roughly estimated to be living at around 3300 BC. When they found him, he was completely frozen in ice, well mummified in ice, and in his stomach, his last meal was some meat and also some bread made from einkorn. So we know that humans have been consuming einkorn for thousands of years. Einkorn is, I think, even still commonly agreed that it was one of the first wheats cultivated by humans because it was a wild wheat, and then they started domesticating it in the Fertile Crescent, which is where we all know that we started. And basically humans just realized, hey, we like this in the wild. We really like it when we farm it, when we grow it and farm it ourselves. And wheat in general, that is why grains in general are such a staple crop for humanity. Now, I have seen a bit of conflicting information with einkorn, variety of wild einkorn versus domesticated einkorn. And the biggest difference is that wild einkorn, the seeds would fall off much easier, or they would just fall off the plant, which would make sense because in the wild, it's trying to propagate itself. Whereas humans started to domesticate einkorn to where the seeds would not just fall off. And beforehand, they were difficult to thresh. And so we did start hybridizing wheat. Einkorn started becoming domesticated, where it was easier to thresh, which is removing the wheat berry from the hull, which you do not consume the hull. And they would not just fall off the stalks. They would stay on until they were ready to harvest. Nowadays, einkorn is simply just not grown as much. Other varieties of wheat started coming into play, which leads us to the controversy when it comes to einkorn. So again, thousands of years ago, we started with einkorn and emmer right along that time. Thousands of years ago, that's one of the first wheat crops that humans started farming and using for their agricultural purposes. And then einkorn kind of died off, and other wheats like spelt, barley is a grain, emmer, those types tend to become a little bit more popular. And I do think it's just because we started hybridizing it to make it easier to grow. We like to hybridize to where it's going to grow easier to where we live, easier to harvest, higher yield. Hybridization is a natural thing, which we'll get to in a minute. But bottom line is einkorn started to become more popular thanks to people like Carla Bartolucci, who is the founder of Jovial Foods. In case you did not know, you probably have heard Jovial Foods because they are very popular for their einkorn products. She also wrote a cookbook all of using einkorn. And what it was with her is one of her daughters had a gluten sensitivity, and she discovered einkorn, I believe, while in Italy or somewhere in Europe. She realized her daughter could have einkorn no problem, as opposed to modern wheat that she would have issues with. So she did have a gluten sensitivity. And from then on, that led Carla to share einkorn with others. They started getting their own farmers to grow it, to produce it for Jovial Foods. And Jovial Foods came about to then have einkorn pasta and all einkorn all-purpose flour that you can purchase, all those wonderful things. And, I say I don't have anything against Jovial Foods. Their pasta is actually really great. Azure Standard sells it. You can find it in other places. But this led to a big argument about the fact that einkorn is an ancient wheat. And then there started becoming these little controversies, which again, many of these are throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Well, the first thing that people like to state why einkorn is one of the best, is far more superior than modern wheat, is they state, it has 14 chromosomes as opposed to 42 in modern wheat. So einkorn has 14 chromosomes, modern wheat has 42. And generally, that's kind of the end of the argument that I have seen. And I actually had to go in and do some digging. Is that bad? What does that mean? How is that even possible? Because einkorn is still a wheat, so is our modern wheat. It's not like they've been genetically modified with completely other different kinds. So I did a little bit of research into this. Now, I think the problem is people hear 14 chromosomes compared to 42 chromosomes, and we instantly think of issues like, for example, Down syndrome, because we hear, more chromosomes is bad. Down syndrome is where a baby is born with one extra chromosome 21. So it's just one extra chromosome. And generally in our DNA code, if just one chromosome is omitted or added, there are going to be issues, like with Down syndrome. So I think that's what people think about when they hear the difference of chromosomes, but that's not the case when it comes to wheat. Now, I do have two sources that I will list below that kind of break down the genetics of how this works, because it can be a little crazy. And I am no genetic scientist, so if there are some geneticists in the audience, please correct me if I'm wrong or oversimplify this in the comments section. But first of all, you have to understand that where einkorn has 14 chromosomes, modern wheat has 42. That's because einkorn has one complete set of wheat chromosomes, where modern wheat has 3 complete sets of 3 parents. And that's why it has 42 chromosomes, because it has 3 complete sets of chromosomes. They just haven't randomly added a chromosome here and a chromosome there. They are actually 3 very complete chromosomes. But basically, the reason why modern wheat has 3 sets is because long ago we had emmer go with a wild type of goat grass or wild grass, and they hybridized. Modern farmers, or excuse me, not modern farmers, then took that wheat, they domesticated it, and a third grass kind of got thrown into the mix and hybridized. And so that's why we had so technically modern wheat has 3 ancestral parents. And again, hybridization is not bad. I did a video all about this, talking about is wheat GMO, but the difference between GMO and hybridization. I will link that below if you want to go into this further. But bottom line, hybridization is not a bad thing. It happens actually naturally. And in fact, if things did not hybridize, then it would die off. It's generally how, the stronger genes survive. So that's one of the controversies with einkorn, is it being an ancient grain and one of the original wheats, therefore it's better. The chromosome argument is not a valid argument to state that einkorn is better or better for us than modern wheat, which leads us to controversial number 2, and that is the fact that they state modern wheat has more gluten than einkorn does, which, yes and no. Einkorn is actually much higher in protein. I mean, significantly higher in protein than modern wheat, but it does not mix well. The proteins do not mix well to produce strong enough gluten for your yeast breads and things like that. So while you may look at the label and see it's a significantly higher protein, which usually is a indication of gluten content, not the case with einkorn, but the strands just do not form a strong gluten content. So that's why they stated that they can handle einkorn because, not as much gluten in it as modern wheat. But here's the difference. Generally, it's not the wheat, it's the flour. Many people that I saw that were saying how einkorn is better than modern wheat, they were consuming more of an all-purpose type einkorn. It's what Jovial Foods sells. And they do sell a whole grain one that contains more of the German brand, but I still think they take some of that out. But generally speaking, people are buying einkorn flour that has been milled, either had the bran and germ removed, or they do have it milled, which is great. But they're comparing it to all-purpose flour you see in the store. So yes, many people do have gluten issues with your fake dead flour and bread from the store. And then if they switch to einkorn, they say don't have any problems, therefore modern wheat is horrible and we should only have einkorn. Apples to oranges, my friend. Apples to oranges. Are you comparing it to how wheat was intended to be eaten, which is whole, to be milled, fresh, and baked? So that is the biggest thing. Whenever you see arguments that ancient grains are superior and better for us and are able to be tolerated by people with gluten sensitivities better than our modern wheat, first question, are you comparing it to freshly milled wheat? That's just the big thing. I mean, big question right there. Because most of the time I've seen people with gluten sensitivities, when they actually consume freshly milled wheat, don't have a problem, as opposed to the wheat, the flour from the store, or the bread from the store that is nothing but gluten and starch, and many times extra gluten added to it. So as I always say, it's usually not the wheat that we have a problem with, it's the flour. So always make sure that we are comparing apples to oranges. I love einkorn. I really do. It's a great wheat berry. It's still wheat. And I also love our hard red, hard white, and soft white wheat, our modern wheats that we have as well. So long as you are milling them whole and intact the way that God intended us to consume them. So that now leads us to the ultimate question. What is einkorn good for and where can you find it? Because it's actually very difficult to find. First of all, let's talk about where to buy them, where I like to purchase my einkorn from, because right now especially, they're the only ones that I'm aware of that actually have it in stock. I've not been able to get einkorn for months until I realized that Pleasant Hill Grain has einkorn. It's an organic einkorn that they do have in stock, and I recently ordered from Pleasant Hill Grain, which leads us to talk about this video's sponsor. Pleasant Hill Grain is the one-stop shop for everything that I mention in my videos on this channel. So I am thrilled to have them as today's sponsor. They're a third-generation grain farm in Nebraska, but they don't just sell quality grains. They also offer bread machines, mills, bakeware, preparedness items, you name it. They even carry many of the hard-to-find grains, and I know that I'll always get quality product and a great shopping experience. They also carry exclusive lines like Como grain mills and Rackmaster ovens. And when I can't find it anywhere else, I know Pleasant Hill Grain will have it. Now, they're not exactly a discount dealer, but if you're after quality and consistency, these are your people. Oh yeah, and shipping is always a flat $10 no matter what you order. I love finding exactly what I need on their website, and it's a pleasure supporting a family-based business that truly cares about my needs. So if you're ready to be pleased, shop Pleasant Hill Grain. Just go to grainsandgrit.com/PHG. So this is my bucket. It's kind of heavy that I just got from Pleasant Hill Grain with my Einkorn wheat berries. So do know Einkorn is definitely the most expensive wheat berry I have ever and probably ever will purchase. In my many years of milling, I've been milling for about 11 years now, Einkorn has always been the most expensive because, again, not many people grow it anymore. It's harder to find, and I think also the popularity with Einkorn made people kind of want it a little more, so just a simple supply and demand thing. But mostly it's just not grown as much as other types of wheats. So that's why it's a bit difficult to find, but I love Pleasant Hill Grain. The fact that it came in a bucket and it even came in a sealed Mylar bag with oxygen absorbers. I mean, I could have buried this in the ground. The bucket was sealed. So the quality is excellent. It is not dirty. There's nothing else in it that shouldn't be in here. And I store it in my little jar here. So now let's talk about what I love to use Einkorn for. Because here's the thing with Einkorn. It is a tricky grain, especially when you're milling it yourself. When you buy the all-purpose Einkorn flour, that's a little bit easier to work with. But milling it, I realized, whoa, this is a completely different ball game than regular wheat berries like hard red or hard white or soft white wheat. But I had a happy accident whenever I've been experimenting with Einkorn, and I realized my favorite place to put Einkorn is actually in my muffins. When you use Einkorn for muffins, and I will list my muffin recipe and video down below for you guys, and all you do is use the same amount of Einkorn flour as the recipe calls. And I realized that this created a very spongy, soft, spongy type muffin. Now, my muffins are not dense to begin with. They are light, but the Einkorn adds this sponginess to it that is simply delightful. It is my husband's favorite. And so because Einkorn is so expensive, I generally reserve it for my muffins. They also do very well in cinnamon rolls as well, which I have a recipe for. I'll link for you it down below. Now, do know when you make the muffins, if you've made my muffin recipe before, don't be freaked out when you see that when you switch it out for Einkorn flour, it's going to be more liquidy, significantly liquidy of a dough. Don't add any more flour. Keep it as is. It's going to bake just fine. So it is going to be liquidy. With Einkorn, it is a stickier of a dough. It's less pliable or flexible. I mean, it just acts completely differently. I mean, we're talking a different grain here. But it works well in those muffins. It works well in cinnamon rolls. So I have that recipe down for you below for you as well. Just with cinnamon rolls, you are just making a basic dough. So you may need to find that you need to add a little bit more flour. And if to add more flour, I would generally add more hard white, hard red, or even maybe a little soft white into that dough if you needed to. But otherwise, you're going to be able to get it. It is going to be a bit stickier and kind of it's just going to look different. But I highly recommend it for muffins. It's way easier than cinnamon rolls. and it's wonderful, wonderful in muffins. Hopefully this video was helpful for you and you learned some things about einkorn. And again, I will be listing my resources that I mentioned about the chromosomes and that type of stuff. I'll be linking that in the description box below. Be sure to check out Pleasant Hill Grains at grainsandgrit.com/PHG and order. They have more than just einkorn there. They have like everything. So I love them so much. So be sure to check them out. Check out those printable recipes below and let me know in the comments if you have made anything with einkorn. What are your favorites? All the things. Thank you so very much for watching, and I hope you'll have a wonderful day. Bye.